Welcome to the 1450th regular board meeting. This is on September 8th, 2020. I'd like to remind everyone to please mute your phones and refrain from typing comments in the Teams. This meeting is now called to order. No action was taken in closed session, and now we will do our roll call. Student Rep Carranza.
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Brown.
I am here.
Trustee Irvin.
Here.
Thank you. Trustee Lopez.
Here.
Thank you. Trustee Newman. Trustee Walker.
Here.
Vice President West.
Here.
And I am here as well. I'd like to refer anyone who needs a translator services to Ms. Paula Valbuena, who is on this virtual conference. Ms. Valbuena, please go ahead.
Thank you, President Marks. Buenas tardes. Habla Paula Valbuena. Si necesita servicios de interpretación al español, por favor llame al 1-085-324-7680 e ingrese el código de acceso 765-045003, seguido de la tecla numeral. Este es un número totalmente gratis. Nuevamente, llame al número de teléfono 1-805-324-7680 e ingrese el código de acceso 765-045003, seguido de la tecla numeral. También puede acceder a estas instrucciones en nuestro sitio web en mcs4kids.com, dirigiéndose a la parte inferior de la página en Quick Links y haciendo clic en Board Agendas para ir a la agenda de esta noche. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we will stand and will you join me? Well, I guess we'll stand and join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Okay, you may be seated. Good evening, everyone. This open session meeting of the Board of Trustees is being live streamed at the direction of the board. The live stream is available on the district's website, and the recording will be available for viewing. Just a sec, I lost my place. It will be available for viewing the day after the board meeting. Modesto City School Board meetings are closed to the public to follow state guidelines on social distancing until further notice. This action was taken in response to the Governor's Executive Order N2520 and Resolution 19/20-17 delegating authority to take necessary action to protect students and staff from the spread of coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, adopted by Modesto City Schools on March 18, 2020. Regarding public comment, Modesto City Schools has provided an opportunity for the public to provide comment. It is outlined on the agenda. The public has been given an opportunity to call in and leave a voicemail or send us a comment via an email address. This practice will continue throughout the time we are conducting virtual meetings. For members of the public that are interested in commenting in the future, we welcome your comments. And now, we are pleased, I am so excited that we have a student tonight to be able to do our Pledge of Allegiance. And we are pleased to have Jaylee Mercado from Fairview Elementary School to lead us in the flag salute tonight via video. Sixth grader Jaylee is an excellent student and a role model to her peers. She exhibits the school character traits for being safe, on task, accountable, and respectful. Jaylee is part of the school leadership team and participates in cheerleading and dance through the ACES program. She is dedicated to her studies and strives to receive perfect attendance. After college, she would like to share her passion for dance by having her own Dance Company. So Jaylee, will you lead us in the pledge? And I'll have the board now rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good afternoon. My name is Juliani Mercado. I am currently in Fairview Elementary School, and I am in 6th grade. Please for the Pledge of Allegiance. Right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. It was so great to have a child tonight, a student, be able to do our Pledge of Allegiance. We really miss seeing you in the room as we used to have. So thank you, Jaylani. And now, Superintendent Noguchi, do you have a welcome announcement?
I certainly do. So first off, thank you everyone for participating in tonight's board meeting. Everyone, not only in the boardroom, but the board members as well. There's two things that I want to bring your attention to tonight. First is some data, some good data that I want to share with you. Data around some achievement goals from last year, distance learning, and then also our enrollment. And then I also want to take a few minutes and talk about a few issues that some teachers have reported around student behavior and in the distance learning environment. So I want to take just a few minutes and make a couple statements about that. But before I start, I want to talk or frame some data that I recently got this last week. Last year, our graduation rate remained the same. While that was not our goal was to have it increase by 1%. I was happy to see that we maintained our graduation rate given where we were in the spring of last year and really the difficulties our seniors and all of our students were working with. We also decreased our dropout rate by 0.6. Graduates earning a seal of biliteracy increased by 0.58, and we also had a 2% increase on our golden seal of biliteracy. A golden seal of merit for our seniors. Unfortunately, we did decrease in our A through G requirements. We decreased by 2.57. Which isn't something that we want to see happen. So we will keep our eye on the ball on that one this year, recognizing distance learning can be challenging, but we still need to ensure that our students are earning their A through G requirements. In the distance learning front, last Thursday, it was just a little under 95% of our students were online. That's 27,581. All of our students who reported not having internet are now all online and all have access. So we're very proud of that data point. Another great data point is our enrollment. Our enrollment is actually up 180 from our projections. So we really knocked it out of the park in our high schools. In our high schools, we're up 261. And we think we're going to analyze this, but we believe that this could be a result of a policy change that we made last year, where rather than having students put in an intra within the district, we just allowed students to go wherever they wanted to in their high schools. So because they were allowed to go to the programs that they wanted to, and we adjusted staffing accordingly, we didn't lose any of them. So we're going to dig deeper to see if that in fact is the case. Additionally, last year we had 240 less inters out of the district. This year we have 180 less. So over a 2-year time frame, we're going the right way relative to keeping students within our district as opposed to them choosing to go outside our district. So next board meeting, we will have an enrollment report for you that'll dig down and get a little bit more specifics relative to our enrollment. So on a different note, I want to take a few minutes just to speak on a few issues that have been reported over the last few weeks, really since school started. Issues that have been reported by teachers about students' behavior online, students' behavior in a distance learning environment. As you can imagine, it's been quite challenging for our teachers to have appropriate classroom management. They're just learning it. Many of them are right there at the beginning teachers learning how to navigate this very difficult learning environment. Modesto City Schools does not and will not tolerate hate speech, bullying, or harassment of any kind, not from parents, not from students, and not from teachers. We take this very seriously. And even if the students believe that they are just joking, they're just playing around, we will discipline individuals that we see either using hate speech, bullying others in the classroom or outside, or harassment. Per our Modesto City Schools Conduct Code, any student who commits heinous acts will be suspended or expelled. Additionally, we will take immediate actions to report hate speech or threats to the Modesto Police Department for investigations and potential criminal charges. It is critically important that students and teachers report these occurrences when they see them. When you report it, you can stay anonymous, and we will continue to work forward and identify those individuals that are participating in this sort of speech. We also need parents to talk to their children about social media appropriateness and inappropriateness, and to take action as they see issues arise. I believe that if we work together, we can stop the bullying and the harassment and the hate speech. It is not okay to participate in this heinous act, and it will not be tolerated at any level. While I know that this sounds like pretty strong language coming out of a welcoming speech to a board meeting, I just want to make it very clear to members of our community that we are taking this seriously. And while we are in a different environment right now, it's not going to deter us from taking actions with those kids that are choosing to make not good choices. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Noguchi. I appreciate your openness and in sharing that and clarifying some things for our students and parents as well. And now I would like to, before we begin our Board of Education meeting and our reports, I'd like to recognize that tonight will be Trustee Walker's final night with the board and present him with a plaque to thank him for his 5 years of service on the board. And I had a few little comments I was going to make, but I understand you're going to make some comments. So, okay, so here, let me, I will read this plaque to you. So this is what I have for Trustee Walker. I don't know if it'll show, it disappears. Let me change my screen so you can see it, and then I will hand it to him. But anyway, I'll read it right now. Presented to John Walker, member of the Modesto City Schools Board of Education from 2015 to 2020. This will be a memorable year for Trustee Walker. In recognition and appreciation of service to the students and staff of Modesto City Schools. From the staff of Modesto City Schools and members of the Board of Education, and it's presented on September 8th, 2020. So I will, if you would like, I will come around and give you this plaque. All right, so staff took a picture and they will post that, I believe, and where this took place.
And if you wouldn't mind, President Marks, I'd like to just say a few words.
Okay, yes, and then I have a little so yes.
So I just want to just take a moment to say thank you to Trustee Walker. During my second year here in Modesto City, as you know, I was challenged with many things. One, getting used to the district as a whole, the community as a whole, and a lot of really big issues as far as district reorg, positions, building leadership. And I can say that President Walker at the time was instrumental in that work. And I just want to thank you for your support and your your focused eye on ensuring that we're building a team, which was very important. So thank you for that.
Trustee Newman?
Trying to unmute myself, sorry. Did I get it?
Yes.
All right, am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I just want to say thank you to Trustee Walker. It's been a pleasure working with you these past 5 years. You were vice president when I was president during the superintendent search. So when we ran together, like when we ran for office, I was like, well, let's just see how this all works, and went into it all with an open mind, and did not expect that we would find as much common ground. And I appreciate your hard work. You work tirelessly trying to understand the issues, analyzing the data, asking for the data, and just keeping everybody on their toes. And it will be missed. And so I think you've done a great service to our community, and making sure that we looked long and hard at our math issues. And I appreciate your work on that. And so I think that thank you for all you've done, and happy trails from here on. I know there's life after the school board, so at least I'm hopeful there is.
Thank you, Trustee Newman. Trustee, I believe it was Trustee Irvin and then Trustee West.
Oh, yes. So being the newest to the board in my infancy at 2 years, it's been a nice little journey, and these 2 years, and Trustee Walker has made that journey, the road a lot less bumpier than I had originally expected coming on to the board. He has shared some insight and perspectives and opinions, and we may not always agree on things, but we can always come to an understanding and have a mutual respect for one another and our opinions. And so I do thank him for that, and having an attentive ear as well. And so it's been a pleasure. To serve on the board with him, and looking forward to seeing what he has plans post-retirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Irvin. Trustee West.
Well, I'm not quite as new as Trustee Irvin, but I was fairly new, and it was I really appreciated Trustee Walker's experience, and kind of taking the new people under his wing. And I appreciated always his support. I know he mentioned diversity a lot, and Trustee Walker was always one that would say we work well together as a team, and we have a great board. And Trustee Irvin's right. We don't always agree on everything. We don't always see eye to eye, but I think we respect each other. And so I appreciate the hard work that you've done. I, for one, am going to miss the way you think about things, because it's not the same way I think about things, but I think having that on the board, there's going to be a missing piece when you leave. So I thank you for everything that you've done, and I wish you the best.
I believe Trustee Brown was first, but
Okay, I couldn't tell. I just saw.
okay.
Okay, Trustee Brown and then Trustee Lopez.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to give that to Trustee Lopez to take on. But John, as we were going through the superintendent search, I think that was the time that we really focused on the need to come together as a team. And I was really pleased that we were each able to recognize talents that the other board members have. And that's what allowed us to work together effectively. And I appreciate your focus throughout the years on supporting teamwork. And I think if that can be a legacy as you leave, we will continue to work on that. and carry forward as a strong team as a board. Without that teamwork, we can't be very effective. And I thank you for your part in helping us be there, and wish you the very best in all your future endeavors.
Thank you, Trustee Brown. Trustee Lopez.
Yeah, well, I would concur what everyone has said, but yes, I think one of the most important things that I take away from you is that that when the superintendent search of how we came together and the work that the work and the time we put aside, but also knowing that we needed to go to find someone extraordinary for the extraordinary work that we wanted to do as a team. And I think that you were a key piece to that element. So you definitely will be missed in your effort to bring a team and bring a cohesiveness, even though sometimes, we have disagreements among all of us. We put our differences to focus on the greater good. And I think you were a great example of that.
Thank you, Trustee Lopez. And I just wanted to thank Trustee Walker for all the work that he's done over the years that I've been able to work with him on. You presided over meetings and handled them really well when you were president of the board. You formed a diversity task force and asked me to participate on that. That was an experience that we had together. That was a really good one. And I appreciated all of the hard work that went into that, and the staff and students that we had on that committee. It has already been said that you were here when we did a selection process for Dr. Noguchi, which worked out really well. And I believe that, as everyone has said, we worked well as a team. So that was a good team building experience. It really was a team building experience. And then I just have to say that you are thorough in all of your research and data. You are the data guy, and you always put students first. I know that that's been a very strong passion for yours, and you are passionate about all you do. I've seen exemplary passion in you. And I know that wherever you go and whatever you do, you will be successful because you put your whole heart and mind into it. And so I just want to thank you for the last 5 years and all that I've learned from you and in this experience on the board. So thank you, Trustee Walker. And now you said you had a few words to say.
I just wanted to thank everybody. I think it's been, as I said, when I talked to our legal counsel in closed session and said sort of goodbye, it's been a wild ride. I mean, we were sort of talking in the break about the first week or so I was in here, and we're having meetings at Grigori, and you're overflowing into gyms. And, I mentored a lot of you sitting next to you at that end of the dais, and you got me involved in CSBA and the Masters in Governance course and that idea of a high performing board. And we weren't there 5 years ago. We really weren't. And I look around now and it's light and day. We really are a team. We function at a high level. We've tackled 400 plus policies. We've switched curriculum. We've established new superintendent. All those different things I talked about in the resignation letter. But I think the most important thing is, like you said, we became a team. And that idea that there's common courtesy and respect, even though you don't always agree, that you put others' interests first, put the kids first. And if others, I think, around the community that are in other governing boards would look at this direction, you'd see a real example of how you can work problems together and get to solutions. And one of my favorite sayings was at one point when I was president we're in the back and superintendent said something to me, and I said, I'm not worried about my agenda. All I care about right now is how can we move 7-0 forward. What's important is that what things we agree on, if we work those out, we can handle the hard issues later. And I think that's something we've done really well, and I'll miss all of you. And I look forward to being a parent for the first time with a child in high school, because it can be quite difficult to be on the board with a student on the schools and still being a parent. And so this is her senior year, so we're just going to enjoy that, keep on trucking, and I'll watch, and maybe I'll do some public comment here and there to sort of just make sure I don't get lost in the weeds out there. Other than that, I'll turn it back over to you, and thank you all. It's been a wild ride, to be sure.
Thank you, Trustee Walker. And now we will go to our recognitions. And I will turn this over to Kristen Noonan, our Public Information Officer.
Is there actually, I'm sorry, President Marks, are there any Board of Education member reports? I have that next on the agenda.
You are correct. I said it at some point, but I did. It's okay. Board of Education report. Do we have any reports? I have Trustee Newman.
Right. Well, I was not able to attend the last meeting, so in between now and then I was at a CIFA meeting on August 12th. And so that was my last CIFA meeting. And CIFA is a school infrastructure financing agency, and we manage 3 CFDs, which are capital facility districts. And we have one that we are moving toward paying off the bond debt, which is huge. And so we are moving towards that. And so we were able to pull some of the homes off of the tax rolls, which is huge. So especially during this time where many people are struggling financially, we will be decreasing tax payments for some people in the for some homes that have been in the CFD for some time. So this is a big movement and very exciting. So as we move forward, as the next person gets to serve on CIFA, because I think I served with Trustee Walker and Trustee Marks, I encourage you to move to, try and understand these. It's kind of complicated, the Melrose tax districts and such, but it's been rewarding work, especially when we see that, we can build quality schools and that we can serve our students with this money. And working with the 2 other school districts, CIFA board is made up of representatives from Sylvan and the Stanislaus Union School District. So just moving forward with that, I encourage those of you who are interested to please step up and to serve. I've been serving on the board my entire time since I've been on the board, so I think it's been 9 years. The other thing I did was I did not appear in person, but I did submit public comment for the Board of Supervisors meeting that took place, I believe it was during the week of August 24th, and I didn't mark it down on my calendar what exact date, but I submitted public comment just wanting to make sure that the Board of Supervisors was well aware of all of the actions that we've taken to help serve our students during this very difficult time of distance learning. The meals that we've served, at that point we had served over 1 million meals to our students during this lockdown time, and just how many students and what we're doing to try and serve our students with tutoring help, with some of the curriculum that's available. And so just wanting to make sure that they knew the biggest school district in Stanislaus County is trying to meet the needs of our students, and working very hard. And I appreciate everybody at the district who's working very hard on that. And so I wanted to make sure that that was known and part of the public record. So I just want to thank the staff for the time that they helped me do that.
Thank you, Trustee Newman. Is there anyone else who has a report? I have a report on a few meetings that I attended on Zoom. So attended the budget meeting today along with Trustee West, and of course the superintendent, and it was a really good meeting to be able to go over the budget and kind of set some guidelines and we did a small group discussion on what we believed would be helpful in actually increasing revenues and making difficult cuts, or at least reducing expenditures. So it was a good meeting. So I thank the staff for all that they put into to make that meeting go as well as it did. And then I attended the San Joaquin Central California CSBA delegate meeting on Zoom, and that's where a lot of board members around the state meet together. So I learned some interesting things about other districts, and one is that a nearby district is going to come back with their special education students. They're looking into meeting outside and doing their IEPs outside one-on-one. There's a lot of parents that wanted to be part of that. Another district is doing distance learning for a full semester before they decide to go in person. Another one said that parents were really impressed with the transition this fall than it was happening for their education in the springtime. And so that was a really positive, and I could see that's happening in our district as well. I've had a lot of positive comments about that. So I wanted to share just a few highlights from that. We also had an update on from our federal, from a person that works in federal lobbying, and she gave us an update that whatever we've spent on our learning loss and COVID-19, that it would be helpful to be able to backfill that or replace that funding with some of the federal funding so that it frees up the money that's in our tight budget right now. So I thought that was a good suggestion. And then I also attended I watched online the Board of Supervisors meeting, really interesting meeting. It took 2 hours to get into the education portion of what we were concerned about on our end and what Trustee Newman sent a letter for. So I appreciated that. I watched the whole discussion about where they would like to start the schools. And anyway, it was good to hear their perspective. And so that the supervisor that proposed it failed on his motion to pass. And right now it's up to the school sites to make decisions and to get waivers in order to have our schools open. And I appreciate all of the thoughtfulness that's going into that as our district has tackled this for months and months and trying to figure out a moving target. To me, it's a moving target, and it doesn't always seem like it's going to work. And then we figure out a way, and then we're told we can't do this. So it's been a challenge as we move forward in making decisions on how best to educate our students. And then lastly, I wanted to tell you, I attended the Dr. Parker Parents Leading Change meeting. So on Thursday night, there's going to be a public forum at 5:30, and our superintendent's going to be on and give a welcoming. And then we have a few other staff members, a number of them, that will be on. It'll be like a question and answer forum so parents can understand better about their educating their students, special education, some of the curriculum issues that we're working on. And I'm trying to think of the other topic, but I just appreciate all the work that's going into the Parents Leading Change and how we're going to have a forum. It's our first time doing a public forum for the parents. So I know that will go well on Thursday. So that completes my report. I believe Trustee Brown has a comment.
Yes, I didn't attend any formal meetings, but I do want to extend some gratitude to our technical staff. I know that a lot of our students have received individual attention to their needs. And my personal needs have been addressed at this meeting. I have some hearing loss, and so it's difficult for me to use headphones with my hearing aids, and the tech staff was able to work with me so that I can use my cell phone for the sound and not have to use headphones that interfere with my hearing aids. So it's just a message to me that tells me what individual effort is being made to recognize the needs of our students, and want to thank them.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we have an awesome tech staff. We've navigated a lot of interesting things over the last few months, and they've troubleshoot really well. So thank you, staff, all of you, for helping us each night that we have a board meeting, because whether we're here in person as we are tonight, or whether we're in our home or somewhere else, they've worked really hard to make it so that we can all be seen and heard. And so I appreciate that. And now we'll move on to our next item, which is our Krista Noonan's going to give us recognitions. So I'm going to turn it over to Krista. Thank you.
Sure thing. Hopefully you can see the screen. Let me get the, let me play the presentation. All right, why isn't it? There we go. Can you see that okay?
Yes. Yes. we
Okay,
can.
good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so tonight I am very excited to bring back our recognition program. We are doing it a little bit differently because we have the virtual setup, but I did not want to infringe upon our ability to recognize our students and staff and to do special recognitions as well. So I will go ahead. I'm going to be doing all the presentations. We've already given the awards to the recipients and we've been able to capture them. You can see social distancing and wearing of masks. So the first recognition I have tonight is our Character Education Recognition Program, which specifically recognizes outstanding students that have been nominated for a different character trait. There are 9 character traits total, and they've been around since 1998. The traits are respect, responsibility, honesty, courage, perseverance, civility, compassion, initiative, and loyalty. Tonight, we're recognizing Johansson Senior Layla Pauls for the character trait of initiative. Johansson Principal Nathan Shar nominated Layla and shared, Layla is always more than willing to help out whenever there is a task to complete. When something needs to be done in her leadership class, she doesn't wait to be asked. She volunteers and goes above and beyond until the job is complete. Layla is an excellent student and consistently sets goals each year to ensure that she will attend a 4-year school after she graduates from Johansson. She is also a vital member of the aquatics program, and in a normal year, she can be seen at the pool every day, helping the coaches and other athletes in any way she can. So let's go ahead and congratulate Layla. Let's do an applause. I'm going to do an applause, a round of applause for Layla, so that because I'm sure she will see this video. So congratulations, Layla. Next up, we are going to celebrate an employee who is our MCS hero. This recognizes employees who go above and beyond for students and families each day. So this month, we are celebrating another Johansson person, Johansson teacher Ann Amador. Fellow Johansson teacher Seth Seamus nominated Ann and shared the following. Ann has been a true contributing member to the opening of school for distance learning this year. After completing many of the Vision 2020 professional development modules, she took that gained knowledge and put it to use for the rest of the teachers at Johansson, creating a template to help teachers review expectations for a distance learning environment, activities using an ed puzzle, and assessments for students to review various tech tool videos, and organizing it all in the Johansson Schoology group. Additionally, while preparing herself for 3 preps this year, Ann supported the History and Social Science Department by creating resources to help us organize our materials, provide lesson templates and examples, and participated in mock Schoology conferences discussing new aspects that emerged. Quite a few teachers have said that the template Ann put together helped them plan the first week of distance learning and provide something for their students. So congratulations, Ann, nicely done. And I know Ann through Leadership Modesto too. She's a stellar human being. I have a lot of respect for her. Finally, our special recognition program celebrates a group of staff or students for a variety of reasons, including different competitions, calendar recognition days, and et cetera. So this month, we are recognizing our health services and our school nurses. So this PowerPoint will show on this slide, this is not representing all of them. There's another slide that has additional staff as well. Now, I'm not going to read everyone's name, but I do want to point out that on the left, Aurora Lucadini, she is the head of all the school nurses, and they do a stellar job, and I think a lot of times they're the unsung heroes. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to point out some of the excellent things that they've done. So since COVID began, they've really stepped up and they've been securing a lot of personal protective equipment, or PPE. You may see that in the media. They've done that for many of our staff, and they've also helped to secure donations of thermometers from different companies. And the total of the donations between, let's see, they've done close to 13,000 free thermometers for our families. And the total value of the donation is about $350,000. It's huge. So we distributed a lot of the thermometers at a meal distribution back at the first week of school, but we will be doing more in October once we get additional supplies from the the donor company. And the company's called Kinsa. They were great. Now, the school nurses have also reached out to parents, especially those with medically fragile students and the special education students, to ensure that they have resources and that the students are obtaining the medical care that they need. They also help make medical appointments for the families. Now, they've also produced various COVID and health-related videos and education videos, in addition to volunteering with the Stanislaus County Medical Reserve Corps to be able to help with COVID-related phone calls and other duties. So I really, oh, and by the way, they are also our main point of contact with public health at the county to be able to report COVID cases. And they also are the go-between who will receive direction from the county on what the county would like us to do. So let's give a hand to all of our school nurses and the health services staff. We couldn't do it without you, and we appreciate you very much. So thank you. And that is everything with the recognitions. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I'm hopeful to bring back more recognitions at the future board meetings. That's the plan. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions? I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Ms. Noonan. And now we are moving on to our consent agenda. And I would like to have a motion for, are there any questions or comments for the consent agenda? Okay, no comments. So I will ask for a motion. Okay, trustee, all right, trustee Newman and then trustee Lopez made a second. All those in favor, and I think everybody can see us, so we'll say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I see no opposition, so it passes 7-0. And now we'll move on to approval of our discussion action items. Is there any comments from the board on any discussion action items and the order of them? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for a motion. Trustee Walker moves, trustee West seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes for our discussion action item order. And now for the public comment presentation, Ms. Noonan, are there any comments from the public?
There's one for the general period of public comment. Okay. So I can read that right now. So this comment is from a gentleman named Ross Jackson. He is a community member and general contractor. And it says, board members, thank you for hearing me today and your consideration on this matter. My name is Ross Jackson and I am a resident of Modesto. I started a building project 3 years ago called an ADU. The following is based on my experience as a homeowner and general contractor trying to follow the new law. What is an ADU? Accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, have been known by many names: granny flats, in-law units, backyard cottages, secondary units, and more. No matter what you call them, ADUs are an innovative, affordable, effective option for adding much-needed housing in California. How does the school board impact the success of the program? Well, there's several bullets that I'll read. School developer fees are one of the 4 fee collections that are potentially levied on this type of construction. Next, there are the 3 other entities that have traditionally collected fees for this type of construction no longer do so, i.e. county impact fees, wastewater capacity charges, and city building connection fees. Next, the fees associated have traditionally been so costly that the vast majority of these projects were never recorded on the tax record, instead being built in the shadows or as non-inhibited space. Little to no tax revenue or fees are collected when this happens. Other school districts have made changes to their developer fees to align with the other governing bodies. This has allowed those cities to have a successful ADU program. Please help make ADUs feasible in Modesto. Respectfully, Ross Jackson. And then he's enclosed a link to a California Housing and Community Development Program website, which is https://www.hcd.ca.gov/policy-research/accessory dwelling units.html. And that's the end of that comment.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Noonan. And now we will move on to our discussion action items and student representative report. Carson Carranza, are you ready?
Yes.
Awesome. It's great to have you tonight. This is officially your first board meeting, is that correct?
My second.
Second, that's right. I was out of town last one. All right, thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone. Over the last few weeks, the high school leadership programs in our district have been busy catering to their student bodies. Modesto and Gregory High Schools are planning virtual Spirit Weeks and online events for the student body. Davis High School has its first day of Club Rush today to keep students engaged on campus while distance learning. Similarly, Enox High School's leadership students are working on their individual class pages to push out information. Fire High School has opened up their student store for pre-orders, and other high schools are planning to do the same. Downey and Johansson leadership programs have been busy brainstorming ideas for the upcoming school year. All of the schools in our district are utilizing social media to stay connected and push out information and news to students. On August 22nd, I joined the monthly Castle Ambassadors meeting where we discussed improving accessibility for students district-wide. Many of the students in the call were very impressed with Modesto City Schools for providing Wi-Fi for students who cannot afford internet access. For the Inter-High Council, I have emailed each of the activities directors at the high schools with the dates for the 2020 to 2021 meetings. The first will be Tuesday, September 22nd. All of the links to the Microsoft Teams Inter-High meetings have been included in the schedule thanks to Mrs. Hinkle. I have requested the contact information for each of the high schools' ASB presidents and Inter-High Council representatives to get in contact with the students to push out additional resources and contact information. This year's Inter-High Council will be especially organized since we are going to be meeting online. A Google folder has been created and is shared with the activities directors, which include the Inter-High schedule, a folder for meeting agenda and minutes, student input surveys, MCS updates, and a resource folder that will be constantly updated with articles, packets, and additional information from several leadership organizations. I'm really looking forward to our first Inter-High meeting in 2 weeks to meet this year's group. That's all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Carson. That was great. I would like to ask, are there any questions? I have one, just on clarification. Trustee, I don't see any. Oh, Trustee Newman.
All right, thank you, Carson, for your report. I think the idea of our students from Inter-High appearing via Zoom will maybe lead to some more students being able to attend. I know in the past, our student representatives have talked about the difficulty the students who don't drive to get to the school site, and I'm hoping this will bring more student voices to the table. And so I think that make sure that that we get the word out through the leadership classes and any other way that we can through the principals and just getting more students. I think that this could be a positive, and I'm always trying to see the positive in this. And I also want to say congratulations to Carson for he's in the running for a national award. So those of you who've been following our Facebook page, it's very exciting. So we have some students from Modesto High that are engaged in an engineering project, and Carson is one of them. So great job. And so if you go on to our webpage, you can vote. And I know that we all have, well, at least I've got a vested interest in it too. So with Mason being on your team, so great, congratulations, Carson. And I'm hopeful. Report back to us of how many students and do appear for the meeting. And I think that this could be a real positive in terms of getting student voices heard.
All right, I will. And thank you very much.
All right.
That's great. Thank you, Carson. And Trustee Newman, yes, her son is on that team. So we're excited to see how they're going to do. I wanted to ask you a question on CASSEL. Can you tell us what that is? And I don't know if it's spelled C-A-S-S-E-L or C-A-S-T-L-E or what it is.
So it's spelled CASL, and it stands for the California Association of Student Leaders. And it is a student-led leadership organization with between 22 and 24 board members each year. and they lead monthly meetings with students all across California from areas A through G, which just basically represent different areas of California, and student representatives from those specific areas come to the meeting each month, and there's usually a specific topic for each of the meetings. And this month was accessibility, and they really had a lot of good things to say about Modesto City Schools after I presented, because I know a lot of other student board members are also trying to follow suit and pushing their districts towards opening up hotspots for the students who can't afford internet, which is a plus, because I didn't realize how many districts didn't have that available for students across California. So I know I'm very thankful that Modesto City Schools offers that to a lot of people. But I really like the Castle organization. I served a term with them on the board last year, and they offer a lot of great resources on their website for students in their leadership programs and students who are outside of leadership and just simply want to improve their school. So I will always recommend them as a great resource on their website, www.castleboard.com. And they also post information on how to lead sessions that will cultivate like good and tough discussions that are hard to have, especially about racial equality and equity in schools. And they offer a great template for students to have that conversation and make it comfortable.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate hearing all the extra information you had about that. I had heard of it before many years ago and was trying to remember exactly what it was. So thank you so much. And now we will move on to item B2, our report on TK6 waiver process to reopen elementary schools for in-person instruction. And I believe Mr. Godot is going to be giving us this presentation.
Yes, good evening, Board President Marks, trustees, and Superintendent Dr. Noguchi. It's my pleasure to be here this evening alongside Associate Superintendent of Student Support Services, Mr. Mark Herbst. We will be presenting this evening's report on the TK6 waiver process for opening elementary schools. There we go. So the purpose of this evening's presentation is to provide you an overview of how we got to the point of being in a position to put forward a TK6 waiver process. We'll review the criteria that is involved, as well as the process and timeline for staff and community input, and share the next steps in the waiver process. This effort and presentation aligns directly with Goal 1, and specifically 1.1, ensuring great instruction the first time. I think we would all agree that in-person instruction is of the highest priority when we can get to that point. Goal 3 is around providing a safe, welcoming, and respectful learning environment. Additionally, the idea around improving customer service for our students, staff, families, and community. So an overview, how did we get to this point? Well, as you know, in mid-March, all schools were closed for in-person instruction. The California Department of Public Health developed a document, COVID-19 and Reopening In-Person Learning Framework, in mid-July. This document was developed to support school communities in making the decision about how, when, where, and why we would open schools for in-person instruction at some point this year. Additionally, the framework authorizes the local health officer to grant a waiver for TK6 schools to open for in-person instruction under very specific conditions. LEAs or districts must meet and satisfy all waiver requirements outlined, and the TK6 waivers can be granted or denied pursuant to the process that we're going to outline this evening. And at this time, we're going to turn it over to Mr. Herbst, and he's going to take us through the waiver process and criteria.
Good evening. There are specific process and criteria that has to be addressed prior to submitting the waiver. First, the waivers only apply to grades TK through 6. So the waiver doesn't apply to any other grade spans. It's important to keep that in mind. The waiver must be submitted by the district's 14 days prior to the desired reopening date, so a minimum of that. The document must document the consultation with labor partners, community groups, and families. The waiver must also be published on the district website and must address specific topics. So there's specific areas that are outlined that we have to come up with a plan on. I'm going to share those on the next slide. The required topics are including cleaning and disinfecting procedures, entrance, egress, and the movement within the schools, use of face coverings and or essential protective gear, the health screening process for students and staff, specific hygiene practices, the process in which we will identify and trace student and staff contacts should one be necessary, procedures regarding physical distancing, the process we're going to use to train our staff and family on our procedures so they're aware is also a part of the document. Finally, the testing of all students and staff, and the threshold of moving to distance learning should that become necessary. Finally, you have to document your process on outlining communication in the event of students and or classes having to be quarantined due to COVID-19. Next slide, please, Brad. It's important to note that the waiver process and guidance has not changed even since Governor Newsom made those adjustments that he made. I believe that they were last week. I'm referring to kind of the color-coded system. So even though he's kind of switched things a little bit, that has not rolled over yet in any change of the guidance. So currently, we're following the following. When they look to approve waivers, they'll be looking at any available current scientific evidence, current state law, whether instruction could be provided in stable cohorts, local guidance and available PPE, current case and positivity rates associated with the county monitoring list, and that's asterisk because that part's obviously changed. There's a county monitoring list now. Hospital trends and capacity, available testing resources, and the extent with which we've consulted with the relevant stakeholders that I talked about on the previous slide. Associate Superintendent Godot, I believe the next slide is yours.
Yes, sir. So the process and timeline, critical to this process is getting feedback and input. So we are scheduling a series of meetings and avenues by which our stakeholder groups can provide us that feedback. We'll be meeting, of course, with our labor partners, MTA and CSEA, as well as our MCS managers group, parents, community. I don't have up there DLAC, key communicators, a number of different things, as well as posting a link on our district webpage to ask for community input on the waiver process. We want to get feedback and input through these virtual meetings. We'll also be conducting surveys of our parents and of our staff, conducting stakeholder meetings and these surveys prior to our next board meeting on September 28th. And then we will review the current state and county guidance along with the stakeholder feedback and survey data to inform our planning moving forward. So what are our next steps? Communication and planning with our county partners regarding COVID testing and contact tracing. This is a big part of the plan, and so we have work to do there in our county and in our district. We need to continue to identify areas of need and collaborate with our stakeholder groups. There's a lot of conversations that need to take place about what it would look like should we come back to in-person instruction. We need to collect data from our surveys, as well as the positivity rates and the things that Mr. Herbst alluded to in his portion. Parent education and support, and we will be coming back to the board on September 28th with the presentation on the waiver itself. And with that, we'd like to open this up to discussion and questions.
Are there questions? Trustee Newman?
Well, I want to thank our superintendent and staff for working on this moving target, and it's just moving daily. And you know, the data is moving, the rules are moving, and then we've got, you know, angry parents, you know, public boards yelling, "Open the schools," and it's just been really kind of a crazy climate within which to try and follow the rules, which is what we have to do. And follow the rules and try and get our schools safely open. We all would like to see our students return to instruction. So thank you for working long and hard on that. So the testing has been something I've been following. Of course, just the requirements, we have testing. Does the criteria set forth by the California Department of Health set forth the kind of testing, who needs to do the testing, and what our obligations are regarding the testing? So maybe you could talk to me a little bit about that.
There are 3 approved forms of testing. Saliva I actually don't have them in front, but a number of forms of approved testing. What's been unclear and has been a bone of contention, and I think you probably read about that in the Modesto Bee article this week, is who really is responsible for that contact tracing and testing. And I will tell you, it's there's some challenges associated with it, especially if Modesto City Schools were to take on doing our own testing. And that includes how and who we would collaborate with in terms of a medical doctor to sign off, but also work with the labs in terms of getting results back in a timely manner. So it is, I would say, the waiver is a challenge in and of itself, but I think that poses a very, very unique challenge in terms of how we would organize and who we would work with on that testing.
So we could have the option of doing, if it was available, and you know, as anybody knows right now, there's supply chain shortages that are affecting almost every industry. You know, and so getting a hold of things that we need to get a hold of when we need to get a hold of them, it's been difficult. It is a difficult time to be running any sort of business or government agency. So we could have a spit test or a nasal swab test, and it could be with a non-government agency that we contract with to do that.
We could, there are approved testing measures, and then we would contract with a lab for those results.
Okay.
With the doctor signing off. That's the way I understand it. Nurse Chairperson Aurora Lecchidini has a meeting tomorrow scheduled with some members from Public Health on that exact issue.
Okay. And so there would be, if we contract with somebody else, there would be some expense incurred by us as well.
Yes.
And we don't know what that is at this point, right?
We do not.
Okay. Gosh. All right. That's a new one too. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your work on this, and I appreciate the information.
Just to that last point, I just want to say, could that funding could be taken care of through CARES dollars, right?
Tim, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think yes.
Correct.
Trustee Newman, and then we're going to Trustee Walker.
Just to follow up on Trustee Lopez's statement, the CARES dollars have a timeline, a very tight timeline within which we have to spend it. So, so yes, the CARE dollars, if they could be timely spent during the time where we would need them for the testing, they could be used for that. But that's anticipating that the testing would be needed during the time we can spend the money, right?
Well, a couple things going on there. The answer is yes. There's different timelines for the CARES dollars. One of the timelines is December 30th, and you're going to hear about that later today in the presentation, because we do have a report on the CARES dollars. But just to put things into context, my understanding, Twin Rivers purchased 10,000 tests. Now that is that's a third of our population. 10,000 tests was a little over $1 million. But that's not even covering the cost of the lab. So you get the test, but then you also have the lab, which is going to take another cost.
Holy cow.
Short story, yes, it can be covered, but it would have to be covered under that tight timeline for some of it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for all that clarification. Trustee Walker.
I would echo Trustee Newman's one, and thank you for the report. I only have one real question. I'll save my comments for when we come back to sort of board comment. One of the slides, and I don't look at testing results a lot because I don't have a lot of faith in asymptomatic versus symptomatic versus false positive, false negative. There's this whole sort of cycle around these things. What I do look at is hospital data. And I think that to me is a much greater indication. And we're probably not going to have an answer to this question, but I would be curious as to what do we feel is a hospital sort of availability rate that would say we feel comfortable opening. That's my real concern, because that isn't test related. It's actually, now you're talking about the people that are actually physically sick in a hospital or ICU. I looked at the COVID dashboard from the county about 2 minutes ago, As of now, we've got a total of 11 ICU beds left in the county. It was 4 at 6. We haven't. So I mean, I guess that's my question: is what would drive that metric that says we're comfortable opening with the ability of the county to take care of people that are sick if we make this decision? Because to me, it's not an education decision; it's actually a public health decision.
So let me add into this. So we can submit a waiver, and the county can approve it depending upon whatever metrics they come up with. It then has to go to the state, and I can tell you that the state is really looking to push back the dates of opening schools, as evidenced by changing the rules, if you will, just a week or so ago. So even if the state did approve this waiver, we still have the decision as this board if that's something we want to move forward with. So our thought is, as we move forward with this process, we see where we get with this process, and then at the end of the day, when it's all approved, we can then say, all right, are we comfortable in end of October, beginning in November, with the positivity rates being where it's at and the hospital rates being where it's at? Do we want to open school at the beginning of November, mid-November, end of November, whatever that looks like? So we can get something approved. That doesn't mean we have to open.
Okay, it just concerns me because we've got private schools that have submitted waivers that have been approved already in the county based on the newspaper report today. So clearly the state has no problem with the fact that we've only got 9 ICU beds and they're still approving. I guess that's my real sort of, in my last hurrah here, if you're looking at how I think about things, this really is a public health issue to me. And if we don't have space for people in hospitals to be treated and we open up and we run a spike up, what does that look like? I mean, because to me as a community member, as I just said, it's not an education decision, it's a public health decision. And I really worry about sort of the neighborhoods we're looking at in the elementary district, which Trustee Lopez has mentioned many times. This is one of the hottest areas in the county, other than looking at Ceres next door. I would be highly concerned. I guess that's just my real sort of in the back of my head. What would drive me to say, yes, this is a good idea? It would be hospital space, ability to take care of people, and not impacting other businesses being able to open up later because we run a spike through. And especially given that we're on a 3-day weekend right now that we don't know the results of, and this county has not gotten through a holiday or a 3-day weekend yet without running numbers up. And I guess that's just my real concern as we move forward, is that we look at it not as an education decision, but as a public health decision and what our decision impacts others on. Because nobody wants these kids back more than I do. Trust me, I want my senior to have a senior year, but we're not even talking about that yet. We're still talking about elementary. But I don't want to impact our healthcare system negatively. And to me, that's the sort of key stat I watch is the COVID dashboard for the county. What is hospital space and how much is available?
Thank you, Trustee Walker. Trustee Irvin.
Yes. Going back to Trustee Newman, Trustee Walker, about the tests. Do we know what tests are approved, so to speak? I know you have the PCM, and then you have the rapid test. All these tests, are they all approved, or are there certain tests that are approved? Are the rapid test approved? What direction should we go in as far as testing? Because I know there's free testing out there as well, but with the free testing, I think they're doing using the rapid test. So I just want to know what kind of direction do we have as far as testing? What types of tests can we utilize that's approved by the health department?
I'm looking at an email right now, and this is probably you might be asking for something a little bit more specific, but this is what's currently being discussed. You have molecular test, diagnostic, which consists of diagnostic tests, viral tests, molecular tests, acid amplification. That's done by nasal or throat swab or saliva. You have antigen tests, which is also known as a rapid diagnostic test. That's through nasal or throat swab. And then you have a serological blood test, which is a finger stick that draws the blood. And so those are the ones that are FDA approved. Again, which one are we looking at? I would say that we're exploring all options, and then we're looking to see from a realistic perspective how we would be able to do widespread testing within our district. But those are the ones that are out there that are approved tests.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you.
And good job.
All right. I don't see any more questions, so you'll need to lower your. Oh, Trustee Lopez.
Well, it's not mine's not a question, so it would be a comment.
Okay, then back to the board for comments. Trustee Lopez.
Yeah, no, I would concur with Trustee Walker. I think for me the most important, and I've been asked a couple of times, the most important is that we can. I definitely want to open schools. I want kids to be in the schools, in the classroom, because there is nothing better than one-on-one instruction in front and live. But I'm one to say that I want to do it in a way that's safe. And I know there's a lot of people saying many things of what safe looks like, but we have to think of everyone from our custodial staff to our teachers, to our students, to our parents, to our administrator. It goes of the unfortunate fact about the virus is that it goes beyond our homes, it goes beyond our classrooms, it goes beyond our businesses, and so therefore we have to take in consideration the overall health and wealth of our communities before we make a decision. And I'm glad that we're exploring options to opening schools, but in doing so, in a health conscious manner. So I've been saying it since we started this process of the pandemic in March, but the only way that we get back into our schools is that everyone has to put in their parts. Everyone has to do their effort in staying safe, staying separated, socially distanced, because we want our kids, we want the kids back in the classroom, and only you guys can help us do that.
Hey, are there any other comments? Trustee Walker. Did you still have your, okay, yes. All right.
Without my question, my comment is very similar to sort of what Trustee Lopez said, in the sense that I want to see it safe and I absolutely want them back. But I think the flip side of this coin is the local economic picture. And I am far more interested in seeing our county and city elected officials figure out how to get these businesses back open first. It's very difficult for me to sit here and say we're going to put 10, 15,000 kids in classrooms when you can't make a decision to open a movie theater or eat dinner in a restaurant without feeling like you're not going to cause public health problems. And I think, to me, that's a much bigger issue that I worry about, is why is that political pressure going to be put on us to open up, which would then force our partners, which are 7 feeder districts, to open up and essentially do what hasn't been done since last year, which would put tens and thousands, potentially 20,000 people in close contact together. That can't end up being a good result with where we're at right now. And I'd much rather see county and city get these businesses open, and then we watch, wait, and be careful, because it's just not worth the blowback if it goes badly. And I think, to Trustee Newman's point, if it's $1 million for testing, there's a huge money part of this issue that needs to be addressed as well. But I'd much rather see movie theaters, restaurants, and businesses and all the other things that are now going to be in much bigger trouble in about 90 days, because it's going to be cold, wet, and wintry. And so how do you do that outside when they're all being forced outside? I think there's an economic part that needs to be squared up before we jump off a cliff.
Well, we can all agree it is a very complicated issue, and hopefully we will be able to navigate it in a way that will be safe, and also get the little guys. We're looking at those little guys that are really struggling at home, not doing well on their computers, and they really need a person that's talking to them, as Trustee Lopez said, but actually a person that's making has that interaction with them. So I look forward to seeing where staff and the county and the state and the CDC are going to give us guidelines on exactly what we need to do in the future to be able to open schools safely so that people can entrust their children to us and parents feel that it's okay. I believe Superintendent Noguchi has a comment.
We have 2 public comments for this.
Ah, yes. Okay, yes. Thank you. I was getting to that and hadn't quite gotten to it, but I appreciate that. And so now, would Ms. Noonan, will you please let us know what the comments are? Thank you.
Of course. Sure thing. So we have 2, as Dr. Noguchi mentioned. The first comment, they didn't indicate their name, but it's Jay Grimbleby. That's the last name. So they're actually questions. There's 3 questions. Number 1 is regarding elementary schools possibly reopening, will children be spaced out 6 feet in the classroom? If not, will there be barriers between them? Number 2, what will lunch and recess times look like? Number 3, if parents are not comfortable sending children back when schools reopen, what are their options? And those are the 3 questions from that individual, Jay Grimbleby. The second comment is from a woman named Deborah Krebs. I hope I'm saying her last name correctly. And she also has a couple of questions and a comment. Her first question is, has the waiver to open our schools been submitted? If not, why not? And when will it be submitted? Private schools in Modesto are receiving their waiver approvals. Thank you, Deborah Krebs. And those are the 2 comments that we received on this item.
So some of those questions were answered in the questions by the board. We want to answer them, or are we going to send them in information through email?
We'll respond to them through email.
Thank you.
Yes.
That would work. Thank you so much. I thought that was the case. So thank you, both of you, Mr. Grimbleby and Ms. Krebs, for sharing with us your questions. And now we'll move on to our next item. B3, report on California Department of Public Health guidance on distance learning hubs. Mr. Herbst, I believe you're up again.
Yeah, I'll start it. Well, actually, Director of Student Support Services, Steve Hurst, is going to do this presentation. You'd kind of talked about it, Board President Marks, about opening up your schools safely and in small enclaves. And again, I don't want this agenda item to be confused with opening up schools, but there has been some recent developments that's come from the California Department of Public Health. Director Hurst wants to talk to you guys and spell out those developments, and then kind of our plan on bringing back potentially some of the students that traditionally have been struggling in a distance learning environment. So with that, Director Hurst, are you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you, Mr. Herbst.
You bet.
So good evening, President Marks, Board of Trustees, and Superintendent Noguchi. Again, my name is Steve Hurst. I'm Director in Student Support Services. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide a report on the Department of Public Health guidance that was issued initially on August 25th of 2020, and then they just gave us a new update here with some additional clarification on September 4th. And this is related to distance learning hubs and bringing potential students back. So obviously, we want to align with our district goals, and obviously this aligns very well with District Goal 1, which has to do with our academic achievement, and specifically 1.2, making sure that we have our students ready to be college prepared, and that we are providing a multi-tiered system of support for all of our students. So this comes in under the 1.4 effectively there. So as we all know, COVID-19 threw a new wrench into our lives and what we have to do. And during this time frame, the California Department of Health has issued various different guidances to provide to us and to other entities how to go about reopening or working with people. On the 25th of August, they did issue a new guidance for small group cohorts and groups of children and youth. And along with the guidance, they also had an FAQ to help answer questions. And then they came out again, as I said, on September 4th, and they issued a new update to clarify even some additional points to that. So the purpose of the guidance was to provide guidance to in-person child supervision and limited instruction, targeted support services, and really the facilitation of distance learning in small group environments for a very specific subset of our children and our youth. And again, this is separate and different and above from the waiver process that was just recently talked about. And the difference with this is while the waiver is elementary, this guidance does apply to TK through 12th grade. So it includes our junior high and high school students. So going through some of the terms and making sure we understand them, cohort, and I put an asterisk next to that because it has a small update. So a cohort is defined as a stable group of no more than 14 children and not more than 2 supervising adults. This group must stay together for all their activities and avoid contact with people outside of their group. And the asterisk on that is they gave some update, whereas 14 and 2 equals a total of 16. They're now saying as long as the youth and adults do not total more than 16, then you're still with a stable cohort. So we could have less children and potentially more adults in the group. The big thing there is the cohorts are not supposed to interact. And that's where our supervising adults really come into play, is they're assigned to that one cohort of children and that they are not interacting with any other cohorts, and they're making sure that that cohort of adults and children, again, stay as themselves, they stay pure and they don't mix. Supervised care environment is where we bring in youth from multiple environments. It could be multiple families or households, and we're bringing them in to be supervised by this adult. This includes programs such as school site where school is not in session or is providing a distance learning. It also could apply to things like child care, or whether you're exempt or licensed child care, small groups that the LEA is really determined have a specific need to come in to be serviced. So things to think about: why do we have cohorts, and why are cohorts important? The first thing is cohorts minimize the number of people potentially being exposed. This obviously would be very important if we did have a case come up for our students or staff or any provider. We want to keep our groups as small as possible. Again, how do we minimize exposure and transmission? We minimize the size of a group. And also, if you think about it, this would help with any contact tracing that might have to happen, or if we needed to quarantine or isolate. And the big thing is that you keep the cohorts pure. You don't mix them with each other, and that there's no physical interaction between either the youth or the adults with another cohort. The cohort size, this has slightly changed, like I said, but this applies to, again, kindergarten through 12th grade. No more than 14 youth initially, and no more than 2 supervising adults. The update to that is as long as the group stays within no more than 16, you could have less children now, and you could potentially have more adults. This maximum size does apply even when all the children may not be participating at the same time. So for example, let's say you had 6 children that came every day, Monday through Friday, 6 children that came on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and 6 children that came Tuesday, Thursday. When you add that up, that is 18 students, and that would mean that we are over the cohort size because these students would be interacting with those exact same adults. So we've got to make sure no matter how they attend. You know, if 4 came in the morning, 4 come in the afternoon, and 8 attend all day, again, we're at 16 students and we haven't added the adults. So we have to be careful how we apply and make sure that we only keep 16 students and 2 adults, or a total of 14 students and 2 adults, or a total of 16. We do want cohort mixing. Obviously, what we would look at there to minimize this is, as we identify children who might need to come back, we want to make sure that we put the ones who live together or might carpool together in the same cohort if at all possible. It normally could be possible, and we should be able to do that. We don't want to move children between a cohort unless there was a health or safety or wellness issue that might come into play. We keep them separate. You stagger, like if we're going to go out for a learning break, recesses, we call it normal day. If we had somebody go out, we'd have one group go out, then another group go out. We wouldn't send them out at the same time, or we'd send them to totally different parts of the campus if we had to do that. The thing that's nice with this guidance from the Department of Public Health is that it does allow us to have one-to-one specialized services that can be provided, and those don't necessarily count into the cohort. So think of something like occupational therapy or a speech or language or behavioral service that really we're struggling to provide to the student. We could provide that to them when they're part of the cohort, could pull them out, do a one-on-one, and then that would not count into the cohort sizes. So obviously we want to make sure that we're looking at all the safety considerations, and so we must follow all the guidance from the schools and school-based programs issued by the California Department of Health. Face coverings would be required as part of this program unless there was obviously some type of an issue that just totally prevented it, but really we should have students that should be able to have face coverings as well as adults. We have to have the regular sanitizing of facilities in our high use areas, and these are all outlined in the guidance that's been issued previously and looked at. We would help screen all of the students and staff on a daily basis. Again, we want to make sure that nobody's had an exposure, they're not running any symptoms, potentially having a high fever, any of those things that might be an indication that we should consider in keeping that student out of the group or the staff out. And then obviously, if we did have an exposure that occurred, we do have to have a plan developed to address the possible exposure and isolation of those students and how we might deal with a quarantine process. So where are we at in this process right now is, and we've been working on this, we have been working on identifying available rooms and locations within our school sites as well as off-site. We started this actually looking at off-sites, working with the City of Modesto Parks and Recreation to see if we could find some facilities that might help with this, and still looking in that partnership, as well as looking at what we have on our own school sites, maybe a teacher who's not on campus and we have a room available that wouldn't be used for anything else. From there, now we've progressed into really identifying students, and we're working with our site administrators on a number of factors to look at with the students, and you can see the list there. You know, things like hopeless and foster youth, or our English learners, or connectivity in the sense of they're just not getting into the class. They may even still be able to have Wi-Fi, but they just can't get in. And we really want to look at that. And then obviously we have some students with specialized service or disabilities that could be considered. But we have to take into account all those special circumstances to identify the students that might make sense for these really small cohorts. When we're looking at hours for our general ed, we right now notice that our school day is really 8:30 to 2:30, and knowing that we would have to have, you know, some drop off and pick off. You know, base hours would probably run something very close to the 8 to 3, but we would base that also on the site needs and the student needs. You could have a group that maybe was 2 hours if that really was the need of that site. So we're finalizing those pieces, but really looking probably in an 8 to 3. And from a staffing standpoint, we really want to work with our MCS staff. We're working with our bargaining unit partners, CSEA, community partners like the City of Modesto and the Police Activity League, to make sure that we have the staffing we need to support these students, because that's the real key. Is we want the adults there to help supervise, give them support, help them access their learning that they're struggling with. So how does this provide support to our students? The first thing it does is it gives them structure and supervision, which for some of our students, that's the thing that they're lacking the most right now. They don't know how to make it work. They can't do it effectively, or they need somebody behind them. We help them get online with their teachers, make sure that they're accessing those live lessons and those interactive pieces with their teacher, which is hugely important. We can help support them, making sure that during that time that they're working independently, that they're getting the work, or if they have a question about what the teacher said, you know, the support staff could help direct that. And then obviously for those students who might have an individualized student service, it would help make sure that that could happen on a regular basis as we move forward. So where are we at right now is we are finalizing our sites and our staffing schedules, trying to get those finalized. We would be starting with a very small number of sites and looking to expand. would like to look at starting as early as next week with our first 1 or 2 cohorts. And so we're really targeting Monday the 14th for a couple cohorts to try and get going. We need to make sure that we've notified our families, have their commitment. We have all of the documentation and everything we need in place to make sure that should emergencies have come up or anything, we have those contacts. Obviously, we would have ongoing monitoring of the health and safety of our students and staff, as well as we really want to monitor monitor the health and safety of Stanislaus County to make sure that it makes sense for us to continue doing this or even do this, because obviously if we saw a huge spike, that would be a concern for us. And then once we get the program going, we want to monitor the effectiveness of it. Is it is bringing the students in, showing us that it's helping those students and really giving them what they need. And with that, I'm going to turn it over if there's any discussions or questions you might have.
Okay, any questions from the board? I see Trustee Brown.
Yes, a couple of questions. I know when the first definition of these cohorts came out, I was concerned because it didn't seem to address the needs of our special ed students. And it seems like the new definition allows for a one-on-one aid and a smaller group of students. Is that what we could accomplish with the new definition?
So looking at our special ed population, obviously the guidance gives us a little more flexibility than what it originally gave when we had the 14 to 2, because we could potentially have a lower number of students and a higher number of adults. And so I know that our special ed department is looking closely at that to see how that would play into bringing their cohorts back and identifying how that would help or what they might need to do to address what the new change that just came about on Friday.
Thank you. And then the other question I have has to do with our after-school programs, our ACES programs. Are we looking at creating cohorts of after-school meetings and groups?
At this time, we have our virtual program for the after-school program. So we've continued obviously supporting our students that way, because these are really designed to support right now the distance learning that's happening during the day. And I would have to worry a little bit more about cohort mixing, which I don't want to go to. I don't think we're ready to go to on-site ACES at this time, although it's something that we can definitely take a look at. But we would continue with our virtual initially, and then as we got a better look at how this is going and could we handle that health piece, we could then potentially look at an on-site ACES program. But initially, I would not go immediately there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Irvin.
Well, Trustee Walker answered one of my questions, which was the ACES, the after-school program. The other one was I saw that the time period is between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. Is that elementary and high school? And is there a time limit on that, or those learning hubs?
So the reason we've utilized that time frame right now is that our school day, and really we're trying to support these students and their access within the school day and those supports they need, is right now is 8:30 to 2:30. And again, we're looking at how do we support them during that school time with the support they need. And then we have to give a little bit of time for drop off and pickup. So that's why we've broadened it about a half hour on each end. This does apply through kindergarten through 12th grade though. So the high school, junior high would be looking at pretty much those same timelines. Special ed might be looking at some shorter timelines because you're talking about a different group of children there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Lopez.
So my question was around the sites. You mentioned that they're trying to finalize sites. Is it going to be if the site gets chosen to be your elementary, you have you will be in the part of that cohort, or you can be from a different elementary or a different high school and still go into where the sites are at? And if so, are we providing busing for those students that have to come from further out?
So as of right now, we're trying to really minimize, again, the cohort mixing process, which would also be considered school mixing as much as possible. So, pick a site name, we would try to identify the most neediest students at that site, create potentially 1 or 2 cohorts on that site of small groups, and really keep them there. Part of that is it's their neighborhood school, and it's the area they interact with. The students that they might interact with might be the same ones they interact with in the neighborhood. So it would be more beneficial to do that than to now I'm going to, using high schools, I'm going to take Modesto High and put them at Enoch's or something like that. Because now we're definitely mixing parts of town, students that don't normally interact with each other. So our goal is to keep them to the sites as much as possible within our, room constraint. We do have to play into that, but we pretty much have identified, I believe, at least a couple rooms at every site that we have available. Now it's just working through the process of getting this up effectively, not going so fast that we create problems, but at the same time recognizing we'd like to get it as quickly as we can, but in a judicious way.
Great. So we're talking about there's going to be multiple, if not all, of our sites, but with 1 or 2 cohort in each.
That right now would be essentially the goal to look at. Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Trustee Walker.
Okay, I'm unmuted. I like the list that you sort of put together for the cohorts, because when I sort of look at where I think we should be trying to provide extra supports in small groups, it would be those foster, homeless, English learners, which would maybe give us a way not to go full tilt boogie on the whole waiver thing. The question I have is based on just reading. Everything I've read, and it goes back to the special ed students, is there seems to be a concern about whether or not you're all the way at the medical fragile end or somewhere in the difference of that spectrum. Concerns with adults and the students about the following the guidance and masking, and it's not an easy group to work with. And as much as I'd like to see us get in there and do that, does that criticism that I read about or those concerns that I read about working with those group of students make sense with what you guys think or see here? If that makes sense.
I'm going to let Mr. Herbst address that one for me because he's more expertise in SPED than I am.
You've been doing very well, Director Hurst. Trustee Walker, you hit the nail on the head. The new guidance allows us more flexibility, which is helpful. And don't get me wrong, I think from a special education standpoint, the senior directors are grateful for the opportunity to bring back children. But with the at least the rigidity of the 14-2 initially, there's a slew of populations of students that have a much richer staffing ratio than that. And in some cases, a student may have a 1-to-1 paraprofessional, but that 1-to-1 paraprofessional, the student may be an eloper, or the student may need assistance with toileting, depending on the severity of their disability. So that flexibility is helpful. It doesn't necessarily mean that it could address the needs of every one of our medically fragile kids, but on the flip end of it, it definitely helps in that endeavor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of get a feel for it because I've read a lot about it, and you'll see folks that care about this issue. Trustee Brown and myself always go sort of into the special ed area. Mm-hmm. But thinking about what you've heard from what other teachers and adults have written in articles or news or so forth, there's always that edge that says, yeah, but we can't get them to do that, or it causes heightened risk to the adults, which then gets me nervous. But I do like the other list that looking at homeless or foster, that's a smaller group. Mm-hmm. And if you could address that or sort of get to the English learners, it would be a bridge between that and actually opening versus a waiver opening, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Trustee West, Vice President West.
Thank you. First, I appreciate the care that you're taking in putting this program together. I think it would be dangerous to rush into something. And so I really appreciate the fact that you're going to start small and see how it goes before you add additional groups. With that being said, I anticipate we're going to have a lot of interest of people, parents who would like their children to be involved. And so do we anticipate that we're going to have enough staffing for this?
Staffing, I think, is an issue that we will be able to handle between some of our, staff that may be reassigned due to that their position right now isn't been as necessary to work with children. Not that they're not working right now, but we could reassign them to work directly. We also have some of our staffing partners to help. The thing I think that is key here is we're not looking at large groups. We're looking at, this is our most fragile or help needed child out there for various different reasons, and we have to be careful about how we identify. And so if I'm saying I got 30 on a site, that's not a huge number. I mean, that's, if you had 30, that'd be about 4 staff on a site. Now that adds up really quickly as we get into junior high school, and all of our elementaries. So I think we will have some challenge. I'm not going to say we won't, but I think we've got a plan in place to address that challenge and make sure that we can keep this staffed as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. And then just the last question is, our nurses and our health clerks, are they on site now? And if not, will they be working on sites that have these groups so that we have some medical care on site for people who need it? For instance, if someone has symptoms or testing or things like that is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, so obviously we do have nurses working currently in the district. They may or may not be on a site that is happening that day. I mean, their current schedules, sometimes, I'm at Johansson these days and I'm over here these days. So I wouldn't say that we would always have a nurse on site. However, we would always have a nurse available to us to immediately get in contact with, could respond very quickly if something came up that we needed issues. And they're involved right now in part of the whole planning process for us, reviewing students, making sure we know what we might be facing if there was a special need for a child or something like that to come up. But this is also going to be a voluntary program, and then we need to recognize that it's a very different than school, that kids have to come every day. We're going to invite them to come to school. We're going to lay out our parameters and our guidelines for it, and the parent's going to have to make a decision that this is what I'd like to do with my child or not. And we're going to respect that decision either way it happens to go, obviously. But yeah, nurses will definitely be involved and are involved and will be available, not necessarily on site.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for all your work that you're doing on this. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Whoops. Student Rep Carranza.
So I would like to assume that all the families sending their children to school for these learning cohorts have masks, but for students who show up to school without a mask, will they be provided for them?
Yes, we would provide preventive equipment for those students if they need it. Obviously, our first goal would be to have them provide their own mask, but should they need one, we would provide them a mask, or if they lose their mask or something happens during the day, we'll always make sure we have that. I mean, that's just part of our regular provisions, whether we're doing this or opening school, either way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then I want to ask Ms. Noonan, are there any comments from the public?
No, there are not.
Okay, so I would like to take a 10-minute break, and we will be back in 10 minutes. Welcome back. And now we are going on to item B4, public hearing of review of draft of the learning continuity.
Continuity.
And continuity, yes. Continuity and attendance plan. And Mr. Godot. But first I'm going to close the regular meeting and I'm going to open the public hearing. And Mr. Godot, will you introduce, and you will be introducing our presenter. So I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Board President Marks. Yes, again, thank you, Board. It's my pleasure this evening to introduce Dr. Lucelena Perez. She will be presenting this evening's public hearing and review of draft of the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan. I just want to start by thanking Dr. Perez for her work. I think you'll note from her report this evening that she has done a fabulous job of collecting and gathering input from a variety of stakeholders, including, and most importantly, in many respects, our students. Just wanted to start that out. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Perez so that she can provide the public hearing and review. Dr. Perez, we don't see the PowerPoint.
She froze, so she might have lost internet connection. Okay, well, at this point, let's
go to the next
let's
item.
Go on to the next one, and we will close the public hearing and return back to the regular board meeting until we get some technical difficulties worked out. Item B5, approval of unaudited financial statements for 2019, 20, and 2020. Mr. Zerly.
Thank you, President Marsh. Good evening, trustees. Let me just a second. Let me call up the PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you for being available.
This very second.
So restart your computer.
That's what I'm doing.
Okay, we can hear you, both of you.
Fred,
yeah, I'm so
Lucelena needs to mute, Fred.
Yes.
What's that?
And Mr. Godot, you both need to mute. Mr. Zerly is going to do his presentation. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Good evening again. Tonight we're going to talk about our 2019-20 unaudited actuals financial report. And this is the next to last, this is the next last item we have for 19-20 when we close the year on June 30th. Following this will be our audited actuals that we do later in the year. So tonight we're going to talk about our estimated actuals versus unaudited actuals and the variance between the two, and then budget changes since last month when we brought you budget changes to the current year budget 2020-21 since we brought you the 45-day revision last month. Looking at this chart, the first column is our estimated actuals. This is how we thought we were going to end the year, and we thought we were going to end the year with $89 million fund balance. That would be a $6.4 million increase to what we began the year with. And then when we actually closed the books, got everything accounted for, we are ending the year with a $97 million fund balance. That's a $14.6 million increase from how we started the year. And it's an $8 million difference from what we had estimated. So there were some changes we'll talk about tonight, why we had the variances. But we did end the year with an excess of just shy of $15 million in our unaudited actuals, unrestricted general fund balance. First thing we look at is our revenues. We had estimated $334 million. And then so we came in at just shy of just above $333 million. That's a variance of $1.1 million, less than what we had anticipated. And then you can see the factors highlighted below, the differences, LCFF ADA adjustments. The difference here is when we originally did our estimated actuals, we didn't have our final P2 number certified from the state of California. At this point in time, we have those. We know our true revenue, and it's $3.8 million short of what we had estimated. And then the others are additions for lottery, interest income, miscellaneous revenue, and such to make up a $1 million difference and a 0.36% variance between what we had budgeted versus what we received. When we look at our expenditures, we had estimated to spend $273.7 million. We actually spent $271.9 million. That's a positive variance of 1.7 million or 0.65%. Again, this is a positive. It's what we want to see when we close the books. And we've worked really hard this year. If you recall last year, this number was much greater. And so we had a much larger increase to the ending fund balance than we have this year. We want to work on our transparency. We were trying to estimate the impact of the closures that we had beginning in the middle of March, and we got really close on our benefits side, and we had a difference of $1.7 million, which was less. We spent less than what we had planned to spend. This is just an accounting entry we had to make. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board, because of our newest lease agreement for computer devices we entered into, we have to record the proceeds of the lease. We actually record the full expenditure on the other side. This doesn't change our financial statements, but it's what we have to do, which is why we didn't have it budgeted. There's nothing in the estimated actuals column. This transaction happened once we closed the books in accordance with the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. Another positive that we had, and this was the biggest reason for the variance, $8 million variance being better than what we had estimated. And these are our contributions out of the general fund to our restricted programs. And the main one is special education. And you can see we had an improvement of $4.8 million in special education contribution, meaning we had to provide less dollars from the general fund to assist the underfunded special education program because we had more revenues than we anticipated by $3.3 million, and we spent $1.5 million less in our planned expenditures. So again, I know he's out there. Associate Superintendent Mark Herbst, as he does every year, he and his staff do a great job of monitoring our special education program and our expenditures and providing the services that we need to provide to our students. Our other funds, all of our other funds finished positive at the end of the year. If you look at the beginning balance and then the net change, some had in red, they had deficit spending. These were planned or part of the fund expenditures, and our other funds total $94 million. So just shy of $100 million in all of our other funds outside of our general fund. So since we adopted the budget, we made these changes to our projected budget for 2020-21. The first is a reduction of local control funding formula of $3.4 million. We had anticipated some growth in our high school population. And because of the way we're funded, we're going to get funded based on last year's numbers. We're hold harmless, so we will not see that. So we're revising down our assumptions for revenue. And then we have some expenditure increases for the following areas. The contract settlements for the Modesto Teachers Association and our managers bargaining unit, SWAN math, and then some miscellaneous carryover. These are unspent dollars from the prior year that we're now spending in the current year. Staff recommends approval of the 2019-20 unaudited actuals financial report, not only for the general fund, but for all funds as noted in the report. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions from board members? Trustee Newman.
All right. Even though I said I wasn't going to ask any questions, the fund balance, I know, I'm eating more words. Okay, the fund balance is high. That's a big number. It's almost $1 million. I mean, $100 million at the end. The general fund balance at the end. That, while it's good to have money left over, that's a lot. So can you Can you tell me why it is that, I mean, we were estimating it was going to be like 84, and then it turned into 97, right? Can you tell me why it went up so high?
Yeah, the estimate was 89 and it turned into 97, which was an increase of $8 million. And again, as the, and that's just between estimated actuals to unaudited actuals. And we tried to explain that in a presentation with about 5 million of that $8 million coming from less contribution to our special education program than what we had anticipated. But the reason it grew in the first place is we have not been in school operations since the middle of March. And so we had anticipated some growth just because we did not have the activities, our normal school activities for March, April, May, and then also June would be without students or staff. So we knew it was going to grow. We didn't know how much. We were trying to estimate what we would have, and that is the main reason why our ending fund balance now is at the $97 million that we are reporting at this point.
Another thing that adds to that is negotiations. So we haven't realized that last year's negotiations in that number either, right?
That is correct, and which is why it was on the slide for, you'll see that in the current year, the negotiated settlement agreements with the Modesto Teachers Association and the Managers Bargaining Unit were not reflected in these numbers because we hadn't completed it by the end of the year. And you will see those dollars as noted in the budget change slide at the end for 2020-21.
All right, thank you. And now we'll move on to Trustee Brown.
Yes, my question has to do with special ed. I see that there were two advantages that we gained. Looked like we had increased funding from the state and also some saving in expenditures. Were those expenditure savings due to the shortened school year? And is that something we can expect going forward?
That is correct. It was due to the shortened school year. We had less dollars that we paid out for transportation services, our contracted transportation, or other programmatic contracts for services that we just did not have for the last 2.5 months as on the expenditure side. Clearly, that has gone forward for now the first month of school, and however long that continues, there will be some more savings in this year's that we have not accounted for in the current year for programmatic reasons. And the revenue is ongoing. We finally received equalization funding, first round of equalization funding for special education, first time we've got it in years, and that those are ongoing dollars that will appear in the budget in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more? Oh, Trustee Walker?
All right, this is just to clarify, when the public looks at this, is my favorite question because it's always a good answer. When you look at that negative spend down on the cafeteria fund, that's because we have to spend it down. And those guys over there do such an amazing job that there's always money to burn down. And so it's a negative number, but it's also this really super positive thing that they run so efficiently that we're always in this sort of cycle of having to burn that account down to get to the right place, if I understood that correctly.
Yes, the cafeteria program is what's called an enterprise fund, so it operates as a business. It operates like a restaurant, and you have to have your actual revenues and expenditures to sustain the program. And they've operated so well for a number of years, and you get penalized by the state of California when you do so well. And so we had to submit a 3-year plan to spend down our reserves for that program. And so you're going to see red numbers, you're going to see brackets until we get to the level that the state of California or the Department of Education wants us to have in that program.
So that's like one of those problems that you're grateful to have?
We definitely are.
just want to highlight what a good job they do because it's a red number that's actually not red.
Thank you we're very proud of that program and the staff that operate it.
So I have a question so it's on the unaudited actuals, general fund combined on that. It's the 2 pages and doesn't have a number. I don't know what page exactly, but it's right after the multi-year projection. So on the projected amount for 21-22, which would be next year, the unassigned balance goes from this year from 41 million for our unaudited actuals to our projected to 8.7 million. So that's quite a drop. So can you help us understand that? And I'm not positive if this was the a conversation that we had earlier, but I had highlighted it before our talk today and the Budget Advisory Committee.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something that we need to watch, and it's something we're working with the Budget Advisory Committee on. So we're going into a period. Well, we closed 1920 in such a great situation, and really it's because one, we did focus this year on our deficit spending. There was a focus on it. We had a plan, and it was vastly improved because we didn't have school for the last 2.5 months of the year. And so what you're seeing as you go across that multi-year projection is that ending fund balance is being eaten into because we're entering a period where, while it's nice to say we're receiving flat funding, in a time like this, flat funding does not keep up with the cost escalations in our budget that we have built in, whether it's for salaries, step and column increases for our employees, the benefit increases, those are not going away. The pension, STRS and PERS costs are going up and going up drastically in the year 22-23. And so those are the main reasons. Our cost escalation is going up at a time when our revenue is flat funded. We're not receiving, or we're not anticipating receiving any funding increases. The only funding increases we could see is if we have more students, if our enrollment increases, and we're not there yet for that either.
Okay, thank you. Yes, because it is such a drastic drop, and I know it's not attributed to the negotiations that we just settled. But I do, because it's such a large number, it's helpful to understand where that's coming from, and that merging of flat and then all the expenses going up. But we do have to watch it because it's about $30 million drop. So thank you so much for that information, Mr. Zerly.
You're welcome.
I do not see any other questions from board members, and I wanted to see, do we have any comments from the public on this, Ms. Noonan?
No, we do not.
Okay, now we will go back and attempt to do item B4.
We do need approval.
Oh, wait, we have to vote. I just realized that. We have to vote. Sorry. Didn't mean to shout, but yes, I just realized because we hadn't had anything to vote on tonight other than the. All right. Trustee Newman makes a motion. Do I have a second from a trustee? Trustee Brown makes a second. All those in favor to approve of the unaudited financial statements, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I see our student also has voted, so thank you. He voted yes as well, so thank you. And now we'll go back to item B4, and hopefully all the technical difficulties have been worked out.
Yes, Board President Marks, if you could open the public hearing again for us.
Yes, thank you very much. I will close the board meeting and open the public hearing.
And without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Perez.
Yes, well, good evening. Thank you for your patience with the technical difficulties. Good evening, Board President Marks, Trustees, Superintendent Dr. Noguchi. My name is Dr. Luz Helena Perez. I'm the Director of State and Federal Programs, and I'm going to be presenting to you our Learning Continuity Plan for public input and review. So this plan presentation will consist of an overview, a plan summary, and we'll also describe the various ways that we have been gathering stakeholder input and then open it up for public input. And so this is the goal alignment of this plan with our strategic goals and plans in our district. So the learning continuity and attendance plan is truly a response to the impacts of COVID-19. In this school year for 2020-2021, school districts in California do not have an LCAP. And instead, we were directed by the governor to put together a learning continuity and attendance plan. We will refer to it as the LCP, as to not be confused with the LCAP. So in this plan, we describe the different things that we've had to do to address the impacts of COVID-19 on our pupils, staff, and the community. The plan also describes the specific actions and expenditures that we anticipate in taking. So this plan describes how federal and state funding is included, and this is the federal and state funding from our original revised budgets. So you will see that throughout the plan that the funding sources that we included in here are some of the CARES Act money as it directly relates to different actions and services, our supplemental concentration funds, as well as some of our federal funds, and only as they related directly to the plan. So this plan had several different components to it. The plan begins with how we would come back to in-person instructional offerings. So as you heard about the waiver that could be included later if we needed to, as well as adding the information about the hubs. So we can add that later as we begin to flesh those out more. The plan details the distance learning program, which you have all been brought up to speed in different board meetings. So the plan details all of the things that we've been doing for our current distance learning program. Pupil learning loss is an incredible component of this plan. And so that has 3 parts: how we would measure learning loss, how we would address learning loss, and how we would measure what we're doing to address learning loss. The plan also has a section for description of how we're addressing the mental and social and emotional well-being of our pupils and staff. Professional development is described in this plan directly as it relates to distance learning. Pupil engagement and outreach is a section in the plan, and this is very specific to what we are doing for attendance and engagement. The plan includes as well a description of how we are ensuring that students receive their meals through nutrition services, and also includes how we have ensured that students have access to devices and Wi-Fi, and that's encompassed in the distance learning descriptor of the plan. So we have received a lot of stakeholder feedback, including feedback from our DLAC. We reconvened our LCAP advisory committee for a meeting, and they provided feedback. I was fortunate to be able to drop in on 5 different schools and classrooms during the first week of school to gain input from our students, ranging in a variety of grades and settings. And we did this through a platform called Padlet. It was very engaging. We've also had meetings and consultation with labor partners directly related to this draft plan, but also as the plan has been developed, all the different components, labor partners have been brought into those conversations and discussions. Dr. Noguchi has held community forums, and so that feedback is also part of the feedback that we consider for the LCP. And through our communications team, a lot of information has been done through social media. One of the things that our plan has as well is all the wonderful work done by the Student Parent Community Support Services staff to support parent needs and understanding the impacts of COVID-19 and schooling. So this plan was developed with the collaboration of many directors in our district and cabinet members, and has been translated into Spanish by our district staff. Throughout the plan, we address how we are supporting our foster youth, English learners, special education students, and when addressing the MVA was necessary to describe some specific aspects of the Modesto Virtual Academy, that's in the plan as well. The plan does outline as well all the changes that may have occurred to staffing roles and responsibilities. So where can the public locate this plan? The entire draft of the plan can be located on our website. And as I mentioned, in English and in Spanish. And we have a link there where community members, parents, and staff can provide additional feedback. And in fact, we have already received some feedback from that link. So with that, we welcome community feedback from the public on the learning continuity and attendance plan.
Okay, thank you very much. Do I have any questions from the board? Trustee Brown.
Yes, a copy of this plan was provided to the board, and I appreciated all the information that's there. I've read the entire plan and was very impressed. So my question has to do with how this is evaluated beyond the district setting. Is there a scrutinization or evaluation that comes by some other entity?
So yes, the plan is submitted to the county for their feedback that they might have for us. My understanding is it doesn't require approval from the county, but the county can provide us with feedback to ensure that we've met all the components of the plan.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I do not see any other questions. I did want to make a comment just that I appreciated the student feedback in the report, you know, that they want to return to in-person instruction, and just that they said that safety recommendations for reopening were also expressed, including the availability of hand sanitizers and the requirement that all students and staff wear masks. So I thought it was helpful to read what the students said and their positive comments about the meals that were provided and the choices that they had. And then lots of really great feedback on different phases, the hybrid scenario, instructional delivery. So if there are people in the public who wish to review this, it's extremely helpful, has a lot of great information in it. So thank you so much. And do I have, I don't see any other comments. I don't know if our student would like to comment, but because it does. Oh, Trustee Walker. I see your hand now. Yes.
If we're going to do comments, I love the feeding plan. My daughter goes out. That's one of the breaks we take is to go out each day and drive by and go get food. We go by buyer. There's currently a search to figure out where Modesto City Schools gets their apples at, because apparently they're better than any apple you can get at the store. My student feedback, and again, it's no reflection on distance learning. Everything's working. It's not a technical glitch, but that student input wants back in classroom, not just because they want back, but it is not, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. It really is. And it's just struggle. And I think that getting back in the classrooms is going to be difficult, but make no mistake that if you're a student that really needs to sort of interact with someone, it's not easy to do on the distance learning bit. And the current plan is just get to May, but it's frustrating, and it's not due to anybody's fault. It's just the student doesn't do well in that environment. And I'm certain we're not alone, but yeah, I want classes back. And so it'll happen when it happens.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, there were some good comments. I don't recall if it was in this one or another one that we had, but about the students and, you know, their desire to get back in school besides that comment. But it was good to be interacting with one another in some kind of groups. So thank you. And now I will ask Ms. Noonan, are there any comments from the public?
No, that we did not receive any on this item.
Okay, thank you. And so now I will close the public hearing and reopen the regular meeting. Thank you very much for that. And it did not have a requirement for a vote on that item. So now we will move on to our report on use. It's item B6, report on use of CARES funding. Mr. Zerley.
Good evening again. Okay, you should be able to see the PowerPoint presentation. for CARES Act funding. Oh, wait, sorry. Go. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about the CARES Act and the funds that are provided through the CARES Act for K-12 education. There are various funding sources that or pots of money that are coming to us for CARES Act funding. We'll talk about each one of those. We will review the last year actual expenditures. So this began in the middle of March, and we did have expenditures that began with the initial shutdown. And then a review of our proposed expenditures for this year, 2020-21, and ask the board for some feedback and input on Cabinet's recommendation or on the proposed expenditures. So the CARES Act was passed by Congress and signed into law on March 27th, 2020. The funds that were generated or given to us were for our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And once we receive all of our funds, Modesto City Schools is expected to receive just a little more than $41 million to offset the cost that we've incurred for the COVID-19 pandemic. The funds are coming to us and allocated in 5 separate funding sources. The Learning Loss Mitigation Funds have 3 funding sources, Coronavirus Relief Fund, or CRF, Proposition 98, and then the Governor's Emergency Education Relief, or GEAR funds. We're also receiving funds allocated to us through the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Program, or ESSER. And then lastly, Senate Bill 117 funds, and we'll talk about each one of these moving forward. The Learning Loss Mitigation Funds, again, are allocated in what is called Coronavirus Relief Funds. Right now, our anticipated entitlement is $30.6 million. And these are the dollars we talk about that have a December 30th expenditure deadline. So we have to spend a little more than $30 million by this December 30th. There is proposed legislation to extend the Proposition 98 portion, and for us, that's estimated to be about $2.7 million to June 30th of 21, but there has been no movement on that legislation. So right now, we're moving forward with the intention that we have to spend $30 million by December 30th. There's also the GEAR funds, or the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Funds, much smaller pot of money, just shy of $2 million, $1.972 million. And we have a September 30th of 22 deadline. Initially, when these funds came out, it was September 30th of 21, but there has been a 1-year extension granted to California to spend these dollars. The ESSER funds, or Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds, just a little over $8 million is what we anticipate to receive. And again, these funds have a September 30th of 22 expenditure deadline. And these funds can be used on any activity authorized by the Every Student Succeeds Act and the other acts that you see listed on this slide. There's various activities that we can spend these dollars on in response to the coronavirus, but it has to be any expenditure incurred on or after March 13th of 2020. That was the date that the president declared a national emergency due to COVID-19. Lastly, we have Senate Bill 117 funds. These are state of California. These funds were initiated early on back in the spring to provide relief to school districts. For us, it's just shy of $500,000, $492,000. These are the most unrestricted dollars we have. There is no deadline for expenditures of these dollars. They were provided to us to maintain nutrition services, clean and disinfect our facilities, provide personal protective equipment, and other materials necessary that would provide students with distance learning opportunities. Because these are our most unrestricted dollars, we want to utilize these last. There's no expenditure deadline, so we want to keep these. We want to spend the $30 million that expire in December 1st, and then the other pots of money that expire later on. The plan is to keep these because there's no deadline to expend these funds. So what did we spend the dollars on initially back in March? So for a period of March to June, we spent $4.7 million and these were the biggest items that we had coming out of the expenditures for last year. We had virtual graduation ceremony, so we had to prepare for that, purchase items for that. We did the John Muir Child Care Center, so we provided child care for first responders. Nutrition services, we provided meals to our students and their families on holidays last year. If you recall, we did it on Martin Luther King Day and Memorial Day. Student package for distance learning, wireless network hotspots, computer devices. We had to, in order to provide distance learning for the end of last year, we had to purchase more student computer devices, sanitizing, social distancing supplies, and communication devices. If you recall, we had to go in shelter in place. And so we had to make sure we had a phone tree in place for people that could answer phones from home to provide assistance to our families, students and their families that were calling in during the shelter in place order. For this year, we've talked about possibly how can we spend another $24 million to get to the $30 million. And these are areas that we're considering. Some are in place, some are kind of on hold to see if there's other items that come up between now and December 30th. But Modesto Virtual Academy, that's a big one. We're providing the resources from the CARES funds for our Modesto Virtual Academy, other distance learning supports, district wireless internet access. We heard earlier how we are providing our families without internet with hotspots. This could be a wireless internet system throughout our district boundaries. And so that's something we're pursuing. Student computer device lease payments. So we have device lease payments already in place. Can we use these funds to make those lease payments for our existing devices and free up the general fund from making those payments? Also on the consent agenda tonight, you approved a $7 million purchase of student computer devices. So we will be purchasing now. We will have a new supply, refresh supply of computer devices on hand. We will not have to lease those. Again, the general fund will not have to pay for that because we'll be using the CARES funds for that. Student desks for social distancing once we get back to in-student instruction. We have a lot of kidney tables, a lot of tables in our elementary schools that have students in close proximity to each other. We're going to have to buy desks in order to keep the students properly distanced from each other and from the teacher. Student desk shields, so these would be partitions that go on the student desk that add to the safety of our students while they're in the classroom environment. Our air conditioning filters, we are upgrading right now district-wide our HVAC filtration, or our filters to MERV 13 filters. That's the highest we can have as far as trapping any particulates in the air. And we're doing that across the district. This one purchased 5 new school buses. Again, we're going to be required to have less students on our bus, which means we probably will need more buses to do that. And this will also free up dollars in the general fund if we do this. So right now we set aside funds to purchase new buses annually. We will not need to do that if we can use CARES money to add to our fleet as well. And then we also have the private school set aside. Our private schools receive the funds we have to set aside for the private schools around us, and so that's included in the COVID spending plan. It's constantly evolving. I know it's going to be changing. This is the first look at what we've come up with that we want to share with the board, and now ask for any input or questions or any suggestions that you may have.
Okay, thank you so much. I have Trustee Irvin first, and then Trustee Newman, and then Trustee Walker.
Yes, I just wanted to ask about, we're receiving a lot of money from the CARES that's helping us build our infrastructure from within. But what about the ongoing upkeep and maintenance on a lot of the stuff that we're going to be purchasing, such as the buses, the computers, and anything else that's going to help us through all of this that we're still going to have after this is over. How is that going to impact our budget going forward in the maintenance of all the things that we purchase?
Well, sure, that's a great question because these are one-time dollars, with the exception of the small pots, the $10 million or so that extend into 22. These are one-time dollars, and so we have to be very conscious of whatever we put into the system now, can we maintain into the future? I can speak in relation to the buses. I mean, we add new buses every year. We have a maintenance program that maintains our buses. The idea of providing new equipment on a regular basis is you don't get behind on your maintenance program as the fleet gets older and needs more maintenance to it. So we already have that in our budget. We're already maintaining our fleet, and adding 5 buses at this point in time would not jeopardize our ability to maintain the fleet that we have. So that's just one example of that. Anything that you see here, whether it's technology related or maintenance related or transportation related, we already have systems in place to provide the ongoing support that is needed once we get the product or service going.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Newman.
Thank you, Tim, for the report. I had a question. What is the private school set aside? I've never heard of us holding money for private schools, so I'm just curious as to how that came to be.
Yeah, our federal dollars, Title I, Title II, the titles that we receive, we're required to provide those dollars to private schools within our boundaries. And so that's normal. That's something we do with federal dollars. And these dollars that came to us through the CARES Act have the same federal restrictions or the federal requirements that our normal titles have that we receive annually.
Okay. And then I just want to comment that I'm excited to see us have the air filters on the list. As we are experiencing some very bad air quality at the same time as our pandemic. It's just fun times here in California. That I think this is really important. We lost school days, or no, we didn't last year, but there were a number of places that did the previous year, and so this is in anticipation. Part of the argument that we stayed open was that our air quality was better in our schools and many students in their homes. And I think that this is an important step in that direction to adding credibility to that. Wildfires and air quality issues are going to continue to be an issue here in California. And I think this was a good use of dollars. So if there's any way, the filtration requires maintenance with the filters and such. If we can stockpile those with these dollars, that would be good in anticipation that our fall here in California is, well, at this point, it looks kind of apocalyptic outside, but hopefully we don't continue on like that, but we can't anticipate that won't happen. So if we can continue to buy that would be great. Anything we can do with these CARE dollars, since we need to spend them down readily, I would encourage us to do that. There's all sorts of things with regard to furniture that I've been talking about for years since I've been on the board, that our furniture is ill-equipped to deal with learning on a device, and we are 1-to-1 and 7 through 12. So if we can use some of these CARE dollars to purchase furniture that allows us to socially distance and also solves 2 issues with one stone, that would be great. Again, this money, the urgency of spending this money rather quickly means that we need to spend it with a long-term, we're spending it quickly, but with a long-term look. So I think furniture is, particularly in our 7 through 12, even though we don't anticipate opening now, right at this moment, we do know that when we do return, they're going to return with a device, and they're sitting on this strange kidney bean type desk that is ill-equipped to handle a device. And so it leads to more breakage. It also leads to less of a conducive learning environment. So let's think about how we can spend this money in the short term for long-term goals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those were Trustee Walker.
Okay, I had to unmute. I guess Trustee Irvin picked up part of my bit, and so did Trustee Newman. The question I had on the buses was similar to his, but are we able to phase out 4 or 5 old buses by getting the new buses, which would actually reduce maintenance cost, if that makes sense as a question?
Yeah, we already have a very aggressive replacement program. Like I said, we fund it annually through action taken by the board. We do fund a replacement program, so we're removing, as we add to the fleet, we are removing those that have gone past their age cycle, and for those very reasons. So we're not spending a lot of our resources maintaining them and upkeeping them. And yes, we already do that very aggressively.
And again, that's why I thought this was a good list, because it shows where we really are doing well with spending, because you got to buy buses. The new buses, as we learned last year when we did the tour, are equipped with different features that the old buses weren't equipped with, which helps keep students safe, keeps them informed, connected. I think the internet internal sort of connection towers we talked about is a really, really good idea. Not only just for us, but as we mentioned at the last meeting, there's a way to loop our partners in the feeder districts in there. And if we're working together, that's a good thing all the way around. I also like the filter reasons for the same thing Trustee Newman did. And I'm trying not to laugh about the apocalypse out there, but it is horrid. And it is an annual event. This year is much worse. I think I saw something today, 2 million acres at this point, and we haven't even hit the hard part of the year. 2 years ago, we had the smokeouts when we canceled all sorts of events that were traveling. And I would agree, stock up on anything you can stock up on that we're going to use, because that also goes to health and sort of just peace of mind when you're in a building. And these older buildings with all this air circulating, that's just really, and even not only that, think about harvest season when they got every tree in town shaking, and dust sweepers, and I like all that. Keep trucking. I mean, I'm glad we got a plan. Those are the 3 things I really liked, were the internet towers, the buses, and the filters, just because if you walk outside, it's Hades. But great job.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Trustee Brown.
So it's nice to see some silver lining to this pandemic and opportunities for some creative thinking. And I congratulate staff for their forward thinking and the ability to use funds wisely.
Thank you.
So, and then I just have one comment. I really appreciate all the thought that went into this, and just being able to see the 5 million that we've already spent in the spring on the needs that we had in our district. And then now, what can we look to for the future? Though I know the HVAC filters are not necessarily for the smoke, but they're for the COVID, so we can have the air circulated and purified for all those that are in the classroom. But I think that having it, the ability to do that as well, helps us at this time of the year. And I appreciate that secondary plus to that. And just all of the list here, I think, and you were asking for direction on this, correct? And I believe the board has agreed with what staff's recommendation is so far.
Thank
you.
So
thank you. And anything that we can add to it, like was said, that would make it last longer, especially the filters. I think that was a good plan. So I don't see anything else. Ms. Noonan, are there any comments from the public?
No, we did not receive any on this item.
Okay, thank you. And now that was a report only. We're going to go to our last voting item of the night, B7, approval of proposed changes to employee benefit programs. Mr. Henderson is going to give this report, this item.
Yes, good evening, Board President Marks and trustees, Superintendent Noguchi, and fellow cabinet members. I'm going to be presenting from a PDF of this. I was a little glitchy earlier today and don't want that to repeat. But it is my pleasure to bring for your consideration and approval this item on proposed changes to employee benefit programs. I did bring some folks with me joining us, Supervisor Employee Benefit Programs in the district here, Cahill Morales. Also, Aaron Ilola, who is Vice President and Account Executive at Alliant Insurance Services. They were the broker that was selected by the Health Benefits Committee to help us out. And also Jessica Fryer, she's a Senior Health and Welfare Plan Consultant with American Fidelity, which is part of the package tonight. And really, I want to appreciate them because there's a lot of background homework and research that's gone into this, all culminating into the presentation here. The purpose of the presentation to give an overview of the Health Benefits Committee work and broker recommendations, outline the changes to employee benefit programs that have been incorporated into negotiated agreements, but also through some marketing of our ancillary plans that was done by Alliant, and ultimately approval for agreements to enact the changes that will be discussed. And then we'll talk about our next steps for the process. This aligns to the district goals. You'll see a technology portion to improve and streamline the operations, but also goal 4, 5, and 5.1, really improving the structure of benefit programs within the district contributes to fiscal and operational efficiencies, and the increase in the district's commitment to and improving the structure and cost of those programs and benefits specifically creates a culture of valuing our employees. And that in turn allows us to recruit and retain our high quality staff. With regard to the work, kind of a little historical, our Health Benefits Committee, as the board knows, was created last year as part of negotiated agreements. And they took a deep dive, did a comprehensive review of the district's health and welfare benefit programs, our participation, our costs. We selected Alliant Insurance Services in order to help us through the process of doing this study. And they came up with a couple of primary conclusions as they looked at our demographics and benchmarking results. First, the percentage of waivers or cash in lieu, otherwise known as the ability of employees to opt out of taking our district medical, is high. The standard is less than 20%, and our district actual is 45%. A second key conclusion was that our retiree enrollment is high. And the standard less than 20%, our actual is about 43% of our eligible employees who take benefits are retirees. And third, the percentage of Kaiser enrollment, employees enrolled in Kaiser programs, we're actually within that criteria. So that is less than 50%, and our actual is 41. So these are 3 criteria used by underwriters when determining whether to quote competitive rates for school districts. And when we are not within the criteria, they represent hurdles for the district to be in a good position to go to market and try and get more cost-effective medical plans and elicit proposals to do that. So our structure, our contract language has allowed employees to opt out and actually paid a monetary amount if they demonstrated they had other health insurance plans, and those structural changes needed to be addressed if we are to get in a position to get quotes for better rates for medical plans. So those were some of the conclusions of that work. So the actions taken so far through the negotiation process to begin to address these areas. With recent MCS and MTA negotiations, we reached agreement to increase significantly the district contribution toward district medical plans from an annual $4,800 to $7,000. That's a substantial commitment. There were changes in the cash in lieu and proof of group health insurance process, and the district agreed to a provision to fund a district-provided life insurance benefit for our certificated employees. We worked with our managers and reached a letter of agreement, both the MTA agreement and the manager's letter of agreement. The board has approved at a prior meeting, but we had similar changes for managers, the increase in district contributions toward medical plans, cash in lieu, group health insurance process, cleaned those up and made them more clear, and also agreed to the provision of a district funded life insurance and for managers long-term disability product. We are still in negotiations process with CSEA, and it's going well. We are looking to address some similar areas of concern. Another thing that Alliant did was they took our ancillary plans and put them out to market, and after receiving proposals, they made the following recommendations. They said you need to look at taking your dental and vision, and you can get better rates through going through a joint purchasing authority. ASIG stands for the Alameda County School Insurance Group. They said you should look at moving from fully insured to self-insured funding on your vision plan. This move to ASIC allows for bundling with medical in the future. It's not currently what we do, but if we get to a point where that's an option that allows for that. Another big recommendation was to consolidate basic term life, accidental death and dismemberment, and supplemental life plans under one carrier. We have a lot of different carriers that it also goes with the next item. A lot of different vendors and carriers for different products in our district, and the more consolidation helps to get better rates, but also streamline some service for our employees. Alongside this, we've been working to make some improvement within our insurance department to restructure to support this work and be able to support the changes in insurance benefits as we go forward. We've actually, since we wrote this slide, completed the process with CSEA. Essentially what we did was restructured and changed some job descriptions to address and switch up the workflow, basically with a focus on all that work to provide education, support, and service for district employees. We looked at, and as part of the package, we're asking to approve tonight the purchase of an Affordable Care Act ACA tracking product, which also will, through American Fidelity, provide support for the annual filing of 1095-C that we have to do with the IRS. That's going to really be able to allow us to free up staff time to redistribute those resources and be responsive to employees' needs. So the specific approval action that we're requesting from the board is in the next couple of slides. It's really related to the agreements that will allow us to take this work forward and move forward with the changes. So there are two related to ASIC, and that's the dental and the vision participation agreements. And the impact of those is it moves our dental to ASIG, realizing the better rates and service through the Joint Purchasing Authority, and vision from a fully funded to a self-funded program. With that approval, we'll establish the $80,000, which will establish the enterprise account for the payment of vision claims. So that's one shift. Secondly, there's attached, all these are attached to the board item. Voya is what we got out, went out to quote and got the best proposal back for employee benefits insurance proposal. We've also just included their letter of intent. But the impact of this one is, this is what allows us to proceed with the basic life and AD&D, as mentioned earlier, for certificated, and that's already per the negotiated agreement. The basic life and long-term disability that I mentioned earlier for management, as has been agreed to in the letter of agreement. It also includes employee assistance programs. Now we do have that through a separate contract through Sutter. We're going to revisit that. The important point to us right now, even if we have a little bit of overlap in service in EAP, we want to make sure that there was no gap and that all employees were able to access those services. And with supplementary life and AD&D voluntary, if people want to do buy-up or have additional life, this consolidates it to one provider, eliminating some of the others that we've used. And as mentioned before, we've been too dispersed in different vendors. Last, we have American Fidelity, both the business associate and state associate and statement of work services agreement, and the quote is for that tracking software for the ACA and 1095-C filing for the IRS. It's just under $30,000 as listed there, and that's going to help us with that restructuring of the benefits department and the workflow within that department. This slide just presents a summary of all of those agreements and what the changes are. And in terms of next steps, we are in the process of negotiating with CSEA, as I mentioned. Health and welfare is an article that's open with them, and we're working on some of the tough matters, as we've talked about here, structural changes and how we're going to address those things. We've had one session, and we meet again on the 15th. And our open enrollment period window is coming up for fall for the 2021 benefit year. And that starts on September 21st and will finish on October 16th. It's going to be our first indication of these increases in district contribution and the commitment toward benefit side of total compensation, and whether or not that's going to elicit more employees to take district benefit programs and start to move in the direction where we'll be structurally in a better place eventually to go out to market on our medical plans. So it's going to be an exciting time to see how employees respond, and the work that we're doing, try to market that open enrollment process to make sure they're aware of what their options are. So the recommendation for tonight is the board approve the changes to employee benefit programs, specifically the agreements as were noted herein and attached to the board item. And we're available for any questions you have.
Okay, so it looks like Trustee West and then Trustee Brown.
Thank you for this report. I have just one question dealing with the life insurance. Switching providers like that, is that going to affect our employees in any significant way?
It's a great question. Thank you. The others may chime in with more detail. The important thing that we did when we went out to quote services was to make sure there was a match between what was currently being offered and what we were getting quoted for. And we have met with the employee groups, and we've talked about the side-by-side comparison of those quotes. So we're confident that what we had before is equal in terms of services, but with both of those products, they were a cost to the employee, and now the district is going to be funding both of those.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Trustee Brown?
Yes, Mr. Henderson, thank you for this report. I have a couple of questions, and they can kind of be tied into one question. So with the self-funded vision plan, it appears that there will be some need for extra staff time to process claims. And you also mentioned there was a restructuring of some of the responsibilities. So will we have to hire any new people, or will this fit within the restructuring plan?
A couple points there. I'm going to ask Aaron if you can chime in on how the workflow of the claims go in a self-funded versus fully funded, because I think actually through ASIG that's not going to represent a huge burden for us. Can you elaborate on that, Aaron?
Yeah, no problem. Good evening, everyone. This is Erin Olola with Alliant. So it works similarly to what we're already doing with the dental. So claims will come through and be processed in the same manner. So it shouldn't take up any more additional administrative time. And it, again, as Mike had mentioned, it will provide discounted product or discounted rates due to the fixed costs being reduced. So to answer your question, no, it should not produce any more work on the end for the end of the HR for district use.
And in relation to the overall staffing of the department, Cahill Morales, since she has arrived in the district just over a year ago in May of 19, has asked her to evaluate all of the department and how it operates and who's doing what responsibilities. And that's what part of that redistribution is. It's taking the job descriptions, looking at the workflow, are we being the most efficient we can, the most effective we can. There are adjustments that we can make to have certain individuals focus on certain types of work. Overall, in the big picture of that, there was one position we identified that was needed for the insurance, for the benefits department restructuring. And it there was a lack, big gap areas, assistance with helping with leaves processing. As you know, during this time, actually, once COVID hit, the leaves related to emergency leaves, I mean, it was identified as a need before and has exponentially compounded just in the last several months. So in the grand scheme of things, CSEA has been very great to work with and collaborate with on how to take those job description, our proposal for switching those up. But overall, one position actually restoring the department going way back to about recession, pre-recession levels. They've been understaffed, we've determined, for a long time.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions. Ms. Noonan, are there any comments from the public?
No, we did not receive any on this item.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board before we vote? All right, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the proposed changes of employee benefit programs. So Trustee Walker makes a motion and Trustee Brown is seconding it. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and so it approves 7-0. And now, let's see, we're going to move to items to be placed on future board agendas. Do we have any items? Seeing none, we will move to a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Walker, seconded by Trustee Irvin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned 9:01. Thank you very much. Good to see our student rep on. Thanks for staying with us. Bye.
Great job, you guys.